Hello, everyone. I wanted to welcome you quickly today to another one of our Creditsafe webinars. I am excited to have some great guests today. My name is Nathan Cobb. I will be your host, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time for our topic today. I know it's one of great interest to a lot of you, so I don't want to take up too much time, but I do want to give you a little bit of a lay of the land, a little bit of instruction here and have you know what's going on with our guests today and our speakers. We want to make sure that you have the chance to ask plenty of questions. So you don't have to hold those to the end. Please make sure to ask them as they come up. Whatever topic's being discussed, if you have a question about that, please make sure to go ahead and ask that question and let us know what you want to know. We want this to be interactive. The way you do that is at the bottom of your webinar screen. There's two little text bubbles that say Q&A ahead of time. I will be monitoring that the entire time. So go ahead, type your questions in. I may or may not call you out by name, but I will definitely give your question to our guests and let them answer those things and make sure that their expertise is the one that's speaking rather than mine. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I do want to hand this over to the CEO of Creditsafe Americas and Asia, Matthew Debbage, and let him run with everything. So welcome, Matthew, and take it away.
Thank you very much, Nathan, and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar, where we're going to take a deep dive look into China, specifically around supply chain and extending credit in China. I'm delighted that we're being joined by Julian Chen, who's the CEO of 3A Credit. 3A Credit is, in our opinion, the best source of Chinese data in the world. And Julian and 3A have been a partner of Creditsafe for a number of years. We're delighted to have him on. He's one of our best partners, and he's got so much wealth of knowledge, particularly around US businesses trading with Chinese businesses. What we're going to do is we're going to ask a series of questions today to Julian. We're going to start by talking about COVID and how COVID has impacted Chinese business and its economy. What impact is that having on things like payment terms and things of that nature? Then we're going to move on to a more of a delicate subject, which is the political dimension between the US and China. Obviously, that's quite a sensitive subject. We won't go into too much detail on that, but I think it would be remiss of us not to mention that. Then we move on to talking about 3A's Chinese data. We're going to really get into the detail of that. What data is available for you guys to feel comfortable when extending credit or choosing a partner in China? And then probably the most exciting part for me on today's webinar is really getting a chance to get into Julian's knowledge. He understands the pitfalls that many US businesses fall into when working with a Chinese business. And I think it will be great to see how we can maybe avoid some of those pitfalls. So we look forward to that section. And then we're going to finish off with Julian's views on the opportunities for US businesses in China. So welcome, Julian. Great to have you here. Could we first of all start with getting a feel for how COVID has impacted China?
Yeah. Oh, first, thank you, Matthew. Give me this opportunity to share my experience, certainly my view, my opinion with everybody. And well, 3A has been doing this business in China since 2008. And since then, we grow quite fast, work with Creditsafe very closely. And one of my feeling about this information business, international business, I just feel, you know, the entire world is just a one piece. It's a one piece. So I will very fast to focus on what Matthew's question, how COVID impacted Chinese business and economy. When coronavirus started, it's nobody knows what's going on. It's a new virus. without a vaccine and cure, everybody, you know, feels scared and fear, and then panic. This is quite common behavior, especially when when we are facing something we unknown. So what China do is first, and try to figure out what's going on, and then decided to immediately lock down the hot pot, which is the Wuhan city, and then into the lockdown the entire Hubei province. That actually helped to minimize the spread of the virus. And it proves to be actually quite effective to control the pandemic going on in China by sacrificing one city to save the other provinces. So but the cost is huge. The lockdown in China led to actually negative 6.5% GDP down for 2020 Q1. And that actually means is at least 12% down on the GDP, because China average last year, they have 6.1% growth, GDP growth. So that's very, very big. So now talking about the COVID, the impact to China, and I will say we will look at it a couple of things. Number one, I call execution. Basically, is the 2 C's. Because I'm from the corporate company, so I use that word. 2 C's: capability and capacity to dealing with the crisis. So personally, I think the pandemic is like a wall. In wartime, it's very important. It's not peacetime, huh? So we say wartime, peacetime. I mean, the president was different. So under the pandemic, so very important is one voice and the solidarity. So it's the key. So China's centralized structure, everybody knows that, tends to be quite effective when managing the crisis. They built a hospital within 10 days. I mean, they tested everybody. I mean, now they have more than 90 million people got tested. And so what they really do, basically, I call like there's a sequence. First, everybody has a problem, everybody freeze. Okay, then try to fix it, then try to recover, then grow. So this has to be this sequence. If you try to do government's aid, everything first before fix, it won't become very effective. So what China does is freeze, fix, recover, and grow. So to me, this remind me pretty much like a corporate when managing the disaster plan, and first to control the situation and determine the problem, solve the issues, and then recovery package. So this is so far I think that China did pretty well on the execution part. And because the market basically everything reopened on February 14th, and so government did like every country, they did do a lot of supports for example, like my office, and the government basically instructed all the company do not let the employee go. Government will support on the tax part, employees beneficial, the social benefits company has to pay, and to let you delay and reduce. So that's kind of help. And the rent is also, so the big office building and office space. And so our company, we got 40%, sort of like a cut for 2 months, and the tax issue. So, so now everything is controlled. What I learned is government, instead of give everybody money, what they do is they give each province is differently. The local authority decided to give the food coupons, like if you want to go to the restaurant, and if it's $50, so maybe you only pay $30, and the 20 basically is use government's coupon. The idea behind it is try to stimulate the consumption, and hopefully the economy will be back ASAP. Now, talking about the consumption in Q1, and China, I think because of the lockdowns, does suffer. China always has been years, they focusing on, they call three engines. Basically, it's the consumption, investment, and foreign trade. So in Q1, the consumptions, of course, everything's locked down, hotel, airliners, and the travel, a movie theater, fitness center, everything's closed. So that down 19%, almost 20%. Investment, you're talking about the buy an apartment, buy a condo, and invested in only one thing they invested actually goes up. But so many companies or startup jump into PPE business. So the investment actually go down 16%. Foreign trade, 6.5, almost 7% down because of lockdowns. So although everything is down, so the number one priority is to control the problem, control the situation, and let everything reopen, economy comes back. So since then, so far, the second quarter in China, you do see everything is coming back. So to me, talking about the consumption, pandemic is not directly, I will say it's a financial crisis. So the Chinese consumption power is still there. China is blessed with all the population and the growing middle class, rise of income. So the consumption power, it seems, is there. Now, I read many articles. The economists are now all discussing the recovery. They're talking about, it's going to be a U shape, a V shape, or L shape. To me, economists is always the second opinion. Okay. What I do is, you read all kinds of news, but I focus on consumer behavior. The behavior is everything. So if you do that, you will be actually quite optimistic about the recovery. For example, May 20th, it's a big online shopping, because May 20 in Chinese, the pronunciation means I love you. So they make every, a possible occasion is a big festival. And the 6th June 18, a few days ago, is also a big shopping event. It's like a Black Friday, in America. So the June 18th, that shopping event is only like 3-4 days, and it actually hit 239.2 billion RMB. So it's about 200 billion US dollar for that one event. So you can tell people get bored, stay at home. And so finally, they want revenge, we call response. So they spend a lot of money doing online shopping, buy all unnecessary stuff. So this is on the consumption part, but consumer. Now on the business, after February 14, business is all back. And you can see all Apple product line all back. But our office, as I said, actually reopened on February 13. And but of course, everybody wears masks. Wearing masks in East Asia, like Japan, Korea, and China, is common. It's part of the culture. I think it's, if you worried about the pollution, if you worried about others got sick and they didn't wear anything, you protect yourself. Okay, if you stay at home. So our office, like in my company, we bought like 5,000 masks and put in the front, and everybody come in and they give them a mask, and it's a supply for like a couple months. And we install the infrared, to test when people walk in, everybody's temperature, everything. So this is on the business side. So business is coming back, but in the meantime, of course, SME all suffered because the foreign trade goes down, and because of lockdowns, the demand of, the retail store, everything. So SME, they are facing tremendous problems. And it's not just because of they lost the sales, it's because of before Chinese New Year, which means January, February, lots of small company already bought lots of raw material, inventory, and ready to celebrate the new year, 2020. But turns out this, so liquidity is all the problem. Okay, we see so much problem on that. And then the government now started with a different package to support SME. But in order to cure the root is still, you have to make sure, I mean, the market and, how to deal with it. Now, most of I think people all understand, and the COVID-19 is going to live with human and probably forever. And even without the COVID-19, maybe after a couple of years, who knows, another COVID will comes out. So this is I think important is what we learn and how to deal with it. And so the Q2 actually economy really shows a good sign. And Morgan Stanley projects 2% GDP growth for China this year. And they said that this is going to be the only positive growth in the world. And the World Bank, IMF projects at least 1% for China. And next year, 2021, everything's going to be bounced, should be 6+% GDP growth for China. Asian Development Bank, they predict 2.3 this year, and the next year 7.1% growth. So let's keep finger crossed and see what will happen. Back to Matthew.
Yeah, thank you very much, Julian.
Yeah,
definitely, you're a fantastic guest because we never have to worry about you giving us all this amazing information. So moving on to the political position we mentioned earlier, what's really happened here in this trade war? Have you seen the impact from a Chinese, from a US perspective on what's happened?
Oh yeah. I mean, trade war, to me, I personally think it's okay. Actually, has plus and a minus. And from China's standpoint, okay? And the trade war is basically, I think a good thing is China will understand what others' perception will be, okay? Understand what we need to improve. And the so-called structural reform and have to actually go deeper. So, I mean, it has a lot of positive side on it. And the negative side, of course, it will temporarily make a lot of turbulence, I call. So problem to me is actually news media. Nowadays, if I rely on media for information, I will definitely feel the sky is falling. You're going to drink whiskey like no tomorrow. And but politics is often, I will say, very draining. Okay, very draining. But I understand because we are in business, and politics and economies are twin brother, and we have to deal with it. And what the global pandemic actually triggered many things happening right now, from my understanding. Number one, people see so-called the ending of globalization. Okay, this apparently changed the landscape of many, nations' geo relationship, geopolitics. Everything's changed. Okay, so how to say? The globalization actually made it, you look back at the, 20 years, 30 years, actually make the world, I mean, really going forward a lot, but also cause the other problem. So I'm not gonna say too much on that. So the ending of globalization, I mean, it really concerns many. And the second is certainly the identity politics. Everybody knows that led to the cultural war in many nations. I mean, China had that cultural revolution back to 1970s, which is caused a lot of damage, of course. And then now the identity politics and really, how to say, it's not productive. In other words, if you don't agree with me, zip up, so it's that's a big problem I see. And the ongoing trade war, as I said, well, it's leads many uncertainties. It's not pretty, but what Chinese always believe, the balance, the harmony concordia, you can call, which means it's yin and yang. So everything goes to very difficult, goes to very cold, then it becomes hotter, hotter, and then reach the summer, so everything is a balance. So the trade war, yeah, it's okay, but eventually I will say everything will settle down, and the global economy will move to the next stage. This is what I always look at, the half glass full. But this is, this always remind me what my mother always says. Mama says, well, no matter what, it's gonna be okay. Okay, so everybody, nothing fatal. No matter what, it's gonna be okay. And the second is the biggest enemy is often yourself. So this is the big one. So now I think the Chinese understand that the biggest enemy is often yourself. So do your own good things. Don't make mistakes. So this becomes sort of like a wisdom. I mean, hope all the leadership, all the countries will have. That's very important. Let me go detail on that. What China is trying to do, especially after COVID-19, is to continue building and maintaining so-called good business environment for a sustainable growth. This is pretty much, again, like a corporate. I mean, you have to develop your so-called business continuity plan. It's the same. So the environment is everything. Okay, the good business, they call good business environment, that includes many things: business environment, legal environment, even political environment, credit environment, investment environment, and even living environment, even like a climate, everything. This is, I'm very happy and very encouraging and encouraged when I see this is actually the priority for China. They focus on that. And so this will lead to many things, I would always say. For example, let me see, money, I always call the money, okay? Money in Chinese belief is like a water, okay? Water doesn't have ideology. Water flows the way he needs to flow. So now what the money looking for place is very simple, okay? They're looking for some place safe and very safe and have return. So you think about it, I mean, and also certainly have to be sustainable. So if China can build a beautiful, let's say, good business environment, and the water is going to flow into. So this is what they believe. They have to do their own thing, do it right. So, so back to, this is, I always call political too complicated for me, focusing on behavior. So this is the behavior. And for example, just yesterday, I think, is it the day before yesterday, China just announced a new rule about they call a negative list for welcome foreign company. Well, China is going to continue further opening and the reform the country. So now they're going to allow more foreign investment, and they will get rid of lots of roadblocks, and used to be only manufacture, sector. You can go to China. You have to set up a joint venture, and then the foreign party can own less than 50%. Now you can be wholly owned, not only manufacture, and also the financial institution, financial services, including banking, securities, bond markets, and the healthcare also. They're totally open, okay? And you can be wholly owned. You can own more than 50%, in JV, and you own all the intellectual properties. And so all these are very good and a positive sign to continue open. So when economy, growth, employment, eliminating poverty, and safety is the priority, I don't think it will go wrong or be derailed. So at this moment, personally, I think, I'm very positive, and the political impact and China side actually is continue and open further to the rest of the world. Okay.
Thanks, Julian. I think we need to get you on CNN and BBC because you certainly cheered me up with that summary. So obviously at the beginning, when I introduced you to our guest today, I talked about 3A data being the best Chinese data in the world. And that's quite a statement to make. Could you just talk through what the data is that you're holding in China and what makes you so different to other providers out there?
Right. Well, I will say, traditionally, people outside of China will think China is talking about information is not very transparent, data will be not reliable, and that kind of impression. But what my feeling is actually is the opposite. I have to say, the background, how to support my point is Chinese have a very good learning ability, I believe, and China has been developed rapidly during the past 2 decades. I would say, especially the past 2 decades, although they opened for 40 years now. But important is they developed by standing on the shoulders of many giants. Okay, example is they came from a village sharing only one landline phone to now everybody using smartphone. So it's indeed amazing. The technology, changed everybody, and then now everybody using social media, TikTok. Shopping online. China is already a home of the world's largest population of internet users, with almost 900 million people connected to the web. That not only generates a huge mega amount of the data, and in the meantime, they also receive unbelievable data. Now, I call it data. You say it's best data. No, data will never be best until you finish the processing and make it useful. And I call it TMI. That's the term we use, called too much information, TMI. So business information in China, now you're talking about big data. China actually is sort of like leading that area, and lots of data, processing data. So we are focusing on B2B. So business information is collected by different government departments. Okay, they collect it from people and they use it for people. That's their so-called spirit. And so all the data is often available in the public. Okay, our company, we observe all the company, with more than 1,500 data items in 21 modules, 65 dimensions. So it basically covers, covers these areas. Number one, we call admin data. Admin data like a company registration ID, address, registration record, contact information, legal composition, legal status, and the government credit, record. It's company doing okay, and so on. So this admin data is very useful to determine and verify who you deal with. Very important. Lots of companies go there. You may deal with you sort your you sort your partner is this company, and when bad things happen, everything shows in the court. You find out, it's different. So this is not good. So determining who you deal with, admin data is very important. Second is we call ownership data. Okay, ownership data like a shareholding structure, related company, directors, registered capital, paid up capital, change of history. And, all these are help to understand company structure, okay? And for compliance issue, you can do the ownership penetration and find out who's really behind the curtain. So all these data are kind of useful if sitting. Then the third is performance data. The performance you include a lot, like business activity data, and the trade and the bank reference, trade reference, bank reference, financial analysis, import-export data. I mean, all these to basically to verify companies' operational status, financial status, liquidity, solvency. I mean, these kind of things. And then is the publications and the negative data. Government published it all, like a court information, litigation records, judgment. I mean, these are all public information. And, intellectual property, copyrights, patent, it's all public information. And also government has a so-called blacklist. If company cheated on tax, I mean, got the government's fine, and then the name will be there. So all these public information is also there is one of the, angle you're looking into a company. And then very unique is Chinese, many government authorities, I call, they all have their so-called rating or score on companies you can use, like a China Central Bank. They have a score for consumer as well as the companies. They have the database is huge, including consumers. I think it's more than 800 million. And the China Customs have their own rating on import-export company. If you have a good rating, I mean, it will very smooth go through the customs. And if the rating is bad, then you know what's going to happen. And then you have tax bureau. They give a so-called score or rating on companies. Right now, China has they just published Q1, 1.27 million corporation companies has a rated A from tax bureau, which means they all pay their tax, they, never cheat, and everything is good. And, so they have a mechanism, I mean, how to do these. But all these tax, and also lots of association, by the way, industry association, and every year they try to give a company and how good you are. So this is very unique in China. It's called China Social Credit System, which is not a traditional rating like we talking about. We rate a company basically just for their performance. Okay, either two way. One is performance, the other is value. Okay, if you want to invest in company, you're using S&P, Moody's rating. If the company wants to issue a corporate bond, I mean, they will go from there. What we do is a business rating, is basically try to determine predicting a company's short-term liquidity, okay, solvency. And if you sell on open account, I mean, is your invoice going to get paid? So the PD is important, the possibility default. And so this is all different, what they do. But what China's social credit system, why it's not only unique, it's a part of the building remember I just mentioned it, a better business environment. It becomes a very effective tool. And it's also very transparent. They have all the websites set there. It's a .org website. You can go to check one company and see what's their social credit score will be. And so it's easy for a public to search and find. The idea of that is sort of like to set up a rule, a mechanism for a consumer to behave, for corporate to behave, to take their, corporate citizen responsibility. And also one thing I want to point out, it makes, I will say, collection more easy, much easier. I give you an example. If somebody owe you debt and you file a lawsuit, you win the judgment, and used to be is you have to find out this guy's hidden bank account or any tangible assets, and you can submit it to the court to enforce your judgment. And then now, if you can't find it, all you need is apply under the social credit system to make the companies, whoever is responsible, they will put it sort of like in the blacklist. So what the consequences is, this guy cannot take first class airline ticket, cannot go to, I don't know, anything, a luxury hotel. cannot even travel the bullet train. You have to take the slow train unless you made a payment. So this becomes very effective. I mean, you can see every month all those unsatisfied judgment is all got solved. So this is a way to handle the business, quite effective, I will say. So now you will see lots of information in China, and actually all the information actually is made public, quite transparent. However, as I said before, it's too much information because average credit managers, don't have luxury all the time to read a book, a long, credit reports, a story, and to prove a credit application. And what they're looking for, actually, my understanding, is a value-added consultancy service, not just data, it's a second opinion. So if I tell a second opinion and this company is in good shape, the legal composition is verified, the identity, performance is good, and the operational status is normal, and the ownership structure looks normal, the so-called traffic lights, and then it's easy. So, to just prove that credit applications. So, and the plus on the other side, you're talking about data. Data is static, okay? It's very cold, and often is very old. It's always delayed, and it could be polluted. Okay, everything in China, you can even have they have a data trade center in Guizhou. They set, and you can see all kinds of data, even climate, even the weather data. So the problem is, important is, I will say, is how to utilize in the processing, clean these data, make it become meaningful. The meaningful thing I'm talking about is like a meaningful rating. And by the way, the rating, we all know we have a statistical model, which is you can really predict, or the credit manager uses, called judgmental model, based on company's credit policy to determine. And we are using as a credit information intel company, and we using the statistical model to make sure the rating is meaningful, you can predict, and also PD, possibility of a default, a solvency index, a risk indicator, all these are important. Okay.
Julian,
and yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. When we're speaking to lots of these sophisticated credit directors across the United States, sometimes they say to us, how do we really believe this data? Because we hear these stories about Chinese companies filing financial statements to this organization, and they tend to be different. So what we're looking at, how can we believe, or how would you answer that question? Can we trust this data?
Well, it's very simple to answer that question. Recently, we have a bigger case going on. I understand in New York Stock Exchange, and once and Ernst Young is the auditor, and So what I say is it's Rule 101. I'm from company standpoint. Rule 101. If it's a big decision, if cross-reference, very important. I mean, company does file information with different party or authority with different purpose. I mean, your information you file with tax authority is for taxation purpose, maybe. You filed with the National Statistical Bureau is probably for census, to report what's going on in the economy, and you filed with your registration authority, and it's a mandatory to keep the company profile update. And then you using your own CPA audit firm for your annual report. If you're a public company, then they have a different kind of rules and scrutiny to manage their company. So the information you get will be, different focus, let me say this. But if you just rely on one, could be a concentration risk. So if you double check with many different sources, especially third party, neutral, and then you compare the information. They should be, if all the truth is there, all the factual information, they should be all aligned, But if there's a huge difference, we'll raise some questions. So I will say, if you're looking into that, come on, it's your own thing.
Yeah.
Even with one credit report, as I said, I mean, the same report you give to 5 different credit managers, they will get all different opinion and the different credit decisions based on their experience, understand the company's policy, and also their guts to take the risk. So anyway, so this is what I said. But important from my standpoint, as I mentioned, it actually all the data is available in China. Most of them are public data, and important is that's why important is like our company like us, you, and to how to say, to process the data, to study it, to provide it, even provide the industry norm, the average, the lowest, the highest, the mean, so you can compare. Basically, whole idea is to get information, to compare, to make a better decision, to minimize the risk. So this is why I'm saying is too much information sometimes is not good. And then it's not just about the data. Important is the value added, the service, the second opinion, third opinion is very important. Meanwhile, a user-friendly tools, like for example, Creditsafe's online platform, it's the trend, I will say, because it provides instant access and quick support for your decision. Often is for small credit line, everything. That's what you need: a quick decision and to decide how that will go. Okay.
Fantastic, Julian.
Yeah.
I was just about to interrupt you, and then you started talking about Creditsafe, so I thought I'd let you carry on there. But that's fantastic. And if we just did 5 more minutes on this, pitfalls for a US business, what pitfalls do they tend to fall into when trading or having a supplier in China? We do something on that, and then we could maybe open up to the questions, because I think there's been quite a few coming in. So what's your sort of experience in that, Julian? What can we learn in the US in terms of trading with a Chinese partner?
Well, US, I will say, according to, for example, the McKinsey's report, I mean, US, most of the multinational companies, the penetration in China market is already very, very high. And it depends on industry. They are taking advantage of the supply chain there, and it's all good. And but so back to your question is how to work with a Chinese like a business, and
yeah.
I will say for China. As at this moment, the second largest economic engine in the world, I mean, I feel China is quite international when doing business around the world. They are quite international. I know if American manager goes to visit China, doing business with there, and you won't feel a big difference there. So, of course, except the cultural awareness, maybe you still needed to understand. And so, my advice is when you're dealing with China, is still the rule 101. Number one, and you have definitely know your partner very, very well, probably better than they know, they know themselves. And so an easy background check, a credit report will basically provide the sufficient intel and to understand who you deal with. And people intend to say, oh, like a sales pitch, I'm beautiful, I'm big. And so important to everything, it needs to be verified. They're very easy. I mean, cost of one lunch, and you can basically get the basic intel and understand who you deal with. I think this is what I mentioned, the identity, very important. Number two is, I will say very important, actually it's not actually the culture, business is business, I will always say. So important is the local legal environment. That's very important. You have to understand that, as a foreign company doing business in different countries, the compliance is very important. And so you have to understand the legal environment. And so this is the following point I will give is you need to have a enforceable contract. this is related to the legal environment. So I see, for example, lots of company, especially the Western company, they want to make a contract. I give you an example is about the jurisdiction in that contract. Often they will say, oh, I'm not so comfortable with the Chinese legal system. And in the meantime, my country, probably Chinese partner won't agree. And then, so let's pick the third place, Singapore. Let's pick Hong Kong. To me, this is wrong. Because the bad things happen. What are you going to do? What you want to manage and control is the Chinese partner. So if you use the third party, that increase your cost tremendously. And then you have to get an arbitration award or a foreign judgment first, then go through translation, notarization, and legalization, have all these legal documents, then presenting to the China court. You still have to go through the Chinese court. So why not, if you worry about the Chinese debtor, just set the jurisdiction in China? You see? So this I see quite often. Even the bigger corporation, the corporate counsel will say, yeah, let's pick the third party. And so this is wrong. You have to be careful. Second, the language, always have to be Chinese and English. We have some cases because the contract is English, then, it gives some hole and can be compromised. And then the next one is, so understand the legal environment is very important. And then building trusting relationship based on factual information. This is always true. It's just like a marriage, building friendship. Very important, the trusting relationship to keep everything going, and very important. And I will say the last is the local resources is important. Okay, you be there, you're not alone. Okay, you need a local think tanks who already understands everything, and to assist your China agenda, to assist your goal over there. This is very important. Then the last, of course, is the cultural awareness. I mean, this is in the blood. People often ask, do you think East and the West will meet? And I say, well, probably not. Because the culture is so different. We look at it, everything is different. I gave example before, is about the credit. When China, Eastern countries, even Japanese, same thing, they look at it, the credit information is often from, I will say, sociology standpoint, which automatically focusing on behavior. Do I like you? Okay, let's go karaoke first, then we discuss business. And then the Western is all economics, not sociology. They instead of focusing on people, they're focusing on facts. So they go in with all the offer on the table, they expect a deal. Come on. So if you understand all of these, and then, you will become the masters over there. Very, a very friendly environment, especially after COVID. And because everything changed. And you're talking about the way of life changed. And, shopping style changed, the communication style changed, travel reduced. And the bigger part is, business part is, the pandemic really disrupts global supply chain, because the reason is very simple. It's all because of trusting relationship, as well as the balance, I call yin and yang, is broken. Okay, so we might, people might see the shifts in China's industry supply chain. People talking about move the company out of China, and the country should control those so-called concentration risk. Something very important. For example, like PPE, for example, and should be everything at home. You don't rely on others. I mean, all of these. It's all valid, I will say. So how that will change, and it's different. I see the opportunity here is, well, China has their unique advantage. The advantage, you're talking about supply chain. China covers, if you look at it at the World Bank, they will say China still covers the entire SIC, which is standard industry code, which means they can make plastic toy to even space station. So they cover cover almost everything now. So this actually creates a unique advantage I call synergy. So I visited a small city in Yiwu, and you go there, the entire town, not very big. They make everything related to, to your glasses, lens, frame, little nail, and the rubber, whatever, everything. So it's very easy, and the logistic is next to it. In other words, if you have an idea, you invented something, receive a patent, and then you go into China, hey, make this happen, become a product, everything. It's basically, it's a one place, one-stop solution. So, what are you gonna do? Okay, so you're talking about China's labor price goes up, yes, but it used to be called cheap educated labor, but now the labor is still there, learning ability is high, and labor force is in scale. So all these are very unique. I will say it's in the short run, it's very difficult to be replaced. But in the meantime, I always say nobody liked it. You think anybody will like China? There's a very interesting example they did is like, if this is Olympic, every country can send one athlete. And then Germany send the athlete and says, well, I do fine machinery and equipment, engineer. And Dutch goes to say, yeah, I do electronics. And France goes to say, I do Airbus. And Greece says, yes, I apply for the gold medal for olive oil. But China sent the one too. He says, well, yeah, I apply all. So, for each one of them, they either get a gold, silver, bronze, iron, I don't care, all the medals. So now, what are you gonna do? People will say, hey, you touch everybody's cheese. And but this is not. Eventually, I always tell people, I says it's called common conflict. Can you imagine right now the Earth is attacked by Martians? So the all Earth is basically one group. Okay, so if you think that way, I go a little bit wild, but my point is so the synergy is still one big advantage what China have. Now, the other one is called, will give the opportunity, I will say, for the foreigners, is the business thinking is changed after COVID. Okay, reason is because of the lockdowns, foreign trade goes down, and then now company says, well, I want sales in order to support, survive. So what should I do? So their policy, credit policy, will become more liberal and used to be very conservative. Now is looking for qualified, quality buyers. And instead of be a police says, well, I watch on the, the credit worthiness. they shifted a little bit. So it's more sales driven. And then the second thing I do see recently is demand for credit insurance. Oh, going up like crazy. Why? Because companies now focusing more on sales, open, instead of, so using the risk mitigation tools is a very convenient, is a good way to we call conservative internal risk control. So this is a trend right now. Credit insurance business is going up. This is all changing. And so because SME, big company, their business thinking is changed after this crisis. So I think it's much easier to do business with the rest of the world. If you have a good idea, oh my God, yes. Because everybody
is a way of a very, very positive message there, Julian.
Right, it's a very positive.
It is.
Positive.
Nathan, I'm just conscious of the time. That there's 7 minutes left. Is there any questions?
We do have a few questions here. Right. So they're kind of generalized. So I haven't popped them in here anywhere in specifically, but I will say, Julian, after 2020 being the way it is, let's not talk about Martians coming and invading, because we just might have that happen. But the first question here, and these are not in any particular order here, do you have, or do you think there will be any long-term changes in the supply chain coming from China due to COVID, or are they all basically short-term and in the next 6 months or a year, we're going to see that change and go back to what we've seen in the past?
Well, supply chains definitely will change after this COVID-19 pandemic. China totally rational, understands what's going on, and you will see all the low end of supply chain probably will move to the Southeast Asian nations, and the high tech part. This is what China is focusing on, but in the meantime, is kind of like we still need more harmony and the balance and to on the global level, and to make sure it will be good. The trade war also affects that. So, but what China do is they are focusing also on themselves, how to they call upgrade, yes, their industry. They call industry transformation, how to upgrade themselves, and the supply chain is wonderful, but how to upgrade it also, it's going to change, okay?
Sure.
But I will say it's all good. It's forced every country really looking into what they really want to achieve, what is their short-term, medium-term, long-term goal is. China is right now, talking about SME level, they're changing their business model, changing their business thinking. For the bigger company, they're all changing. My company is changing. Right. It has been transforming. Yeah. It's called industry transforming from traditional credit reporting to really an IT firm, and focusing on bigger data, online solutions, talking about the APP, and talking about the AI even, to let the machine learning, to understand, whatever the information
making and all that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go to a couple of more of these here. I have Steve Carpenter is asking if you have what the average DBT is for China compared to the U.S.
What is DBT?
So days beyond terms. So
basically, are Chinese business paying on time? Are they paying on late? What's culturally?
Right. Well, this is a very popular question. People always ask, say, why China doesn't have, can you provide a payment index like Dun & Bradstreet does? And what is the, payment history, that kind of thing? Well, I will tell you, very difficult. Reason why? Because, again, the payment culture and the mechanism in China is unique, is different than the West. In America, for example, if I ship the goods, I issue the invoice. The date of invoice is the birth of that receivables, okay? And the term is 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then as long as within that you pay, that's good. And after, 30-day delayed, default, but in China, because government is centralized, the government do charge VAT. Company use the invoices all acquired or purchased from government. So all the invoices are all standard, doesn't matter which company. And so in other words, every time you issue an invoice, you have to pay VAT immediately. So the business culture is, if I shipped all the furniture, so one container furniture to you, I will, the term is 60 days, I will basically keep sending you called instruction of payments, follow up what's going on, their salespeople. Actually, think about it, it's very not very cost effective, but until the other part, the buyer says, yes, I'm ready to pay, and they issue the invoice. So the date of invoice is that day. Once they issue invoice, they make a payment to pay the tax, they receive the payments, boom.
Okay, so it's just a different, it's a different culture, so it's hard to even answer that question.
Very difficult to judge the company. So what we do is, if you order credit reports, this one you doesn't have a bigger data, unless you're a multinational company. I mean, like a bigger company, a Chinese company is a multinational company. Then they probably have some record on that. But other than that, what we do is we are using interview. And the co-founder is using interview. Eula Hermes is using let the people to answer a survey online. But problem is you don't know who's answering. They qualified. What we do is we're making phone call to the company and it says, well, what's your so-called trader reference? What do you think about this company? And, you happy with everything? Yeah, they say, yeah, it's quite good. Everything within terms.
Right.
Also, yes, they are kind of slow. So instead, it's also structured data, but it will say within terms, slow payment, default, or some missing collection.
Okay.
So, but this is very subjective. It's not real data. So in China, as I said, you don't have really that DBT. But what we also do is called payment behavior. We study.
Right.
Okay? Payment behavior, like how often you pay and how much you pay, and
sure.
That kind of figures. So this might help. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not an apples to apples comparison, but that's helpful. I appreciate it. You got another one here. Do you see any more downward trends to the idea of an import tariff wars? You've hit on that a little bit. I don't want to get you into any trouble with anything. But are there some things that you can see that are going on that can be problematic with that?
Well, I will say right now, what's going on right now, everything is political. Yeah, you raise tariff on me, I raise tariff on you, and everything is bilateral. And but I will say, you're talking about, if you understand China again, 5,000 year history, I have to go wild again. It's all about balance. Yin and yang is really in everybody's blood. It's a balance. Nobody want to take your lunch, put you into the corner. That's what Chinese culture is. They want a win-win. Everything's a win-win. Everybody happy. Right. Okay, it's a balance. But this is a plus side and downside. Downside is people will say, hey, we have a deal. Why all of a sudden we renegotiate? Right. Because it's the balance. Okay, it's a balance sometimes. So it's a behavior issue. So what I'm saying is for the import tariff, I will say, if all the politics settle down, I mean, China, they want to become totally a true, I will say, fair WTO member. Everything tariff will go down, maybe to zero. Everything is, free to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I say.
Avoid the politics, and that equilibrium is going to find. We're going to find that. Right.
Yes, because only China has they opened all these free trade zones. The whole idea is to make a tax go down. They open so many free, and they also the only country probably only have the expo on import only, expo once a year. Now this year, because of a pandemic, I mean, they're probably going to skip the one.
Well, so, I don't think anybody's having expos right now, but and actually that kind of leads into the next question. This other one we have here is: do you see any changes right now in Chinese business and Chinese culture in their appetite for American businesses or American products due to COVID? I mean, is there? You kind of touched on it earlier, but is there an increase or a decrease in that?
The appetite change, I will say, Chinese probably even want more business and the services. Okay. According to study by McKinsey, I mean the report 2019 or 2020. And as I said, with the rise of the middle class and the Chinese income, and they call middle class in China is already more than the U.S. population, and so Chinese consumer really demanding more and a better choice in goods and the services. Okay. This is all the good opportunity, and this is all the saying is still kind of right. If every Chinese consume one can of Coke, you know how much you can sell. But
right, no, Coke would love that if we could share the world of Coke.
So I will say it's Chinese loves lobsters, and Angus beef is wonderful. Right. You know what I mean.
Now I'm hungry.
No problem.
Right. Okay. And I do have one other question here, and if anybody else has another one, write it in real quick before we have to wrap up here. But have any of the data sources that you're using in China, have you seen a significant disruption? And you kind of hit on this a little bit, but have you seen any type of a significant disruption or change because of COVID from them?
Well, personally, I didn't see any COVID. related or affecting our business in terms of data collecting and processing. But one thing is true though, under the current, I will say, let me put it this way, macro global environment, I will say only thing certain is the uncertainty. So what I see related to this topic is, you see the cyber risk, cybersecurity risk, compliance, the requirement for data protection, different political agenda, et cetera, et cetera. All these things are affecting trusting relationship between people and among nations. So this affects the data because every nation is actually building invisible walls, believe it or not. Okay, to prevent them, to prevent from hacking, stealing, attacking, and whatever. So the cybersecurity is everything. So because of that, that makes data flows, especially cross-border data flows, and limited and become ineffective. So information. So if this becomes true, and you will see something is happening right now, actually. It's going to be, information will be harder to verify, and the cost of decision-making process certainly will increasing the cost. Sure. So this is the downside on that. But look positively, and this actually is the opportunity in crisis for Creditsafe for 3A credit, because our business, indeed, actually, you think about it, it's a cure for such challenge. Legal information is not equal to everybody. So credit information and the rating, we are bridging the parties. Right. We are promoting, they call financial communication, and that's what rating do, promoting financial communication and understanding of a healthy business development. So this is very good. This is also an important pivotal, for building a business, a better business environment I talked about earlier. Absolutely. So this is the opportunity for our business and our industry, and to do it. But one thing is true: every country at the ending, I call the ending of deglobalization, but make every country is building their wall, invisible walls. So this will become. Plus the TMI, too much information, it will become very, very difficult. This is why you see so many disinformation and misinformation, because the information is not equal to everybody. Right. Yeah.
Well, like you said, it's how do you use that information? Information is out there. It's how can businesses use it? So that's great. That's awesome. Like we were talking about before, gentlemen, we could do a 3-day summit with the two of you and keep going and probably still have more content beyond that. But I am going to have to end us here. We've gone a little over time. Matthew, anything else you want to add?
I just wanted to say thank you to Julian for taking your time out, and I hope you get on that plane back to Shanghai in 2 weeks' time.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Julian. And thank you all for joining us today. You can always check out all of our other webinars at creditsafe.com, and you can find out any other ones. And the recording of this will be available in the next 24 hours. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.